Welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to determine what the best movie is of any given year. I'm your host, Mike Gravano, and this year is 1996. So let me welcome everybody to the Wild Wild West. Step into your Mary Janes and choose life. I know that's not this show. You already heard that show. Before I introduce this week's panelists, know that this show is also a game in which points are awarded for well-made arguments, cogent thoughts about the film, jokes, and anything else I feel like awarding. The winner will be my best friend for a week and have gloating rights in perpetuity. Joining me today are my personal Victor Hugo and Laverne. Ryan?
Mike, I want to just give you so much credit and just applaud your bravery for assuming that the Hunchback show will come out after the Trainspotting show like it's supposed to and not totally different. So
I'm trapezing without a net right
You
now.
are.
Just assuming our schedule is going. I posted months ago the release order of 1996's, and instantly the next day I was like, well, that's different, that's wrong now.
I remember you texting us, why don't we always do this? And then right away texting, oh, I know why we don't always do this.
I think next season, I'll say in no particular order, these are the movies we're watching this year, and then people can get mad. Ryan, who do you want to be? Are you claiming which gargoyle? Are you Hugo, Victor, or Laverne?
Well, I thought you were saying Victor Hugo and Laverne. So I was going to be the author of the original novel, Victor Hugo, and then our guest could be Laverne, a gargoyle.
You know what? That's what you're choosing because there's just two of you. Our guest, you heard him last year. He's back again. You know him. You love him. It's Marvel Movie Minute and the next reels. Andy Nelson, our Laverne.
Hello. Get these damn birds off of me.
Dude, you did watch this movie.
I've seen it a few times.
Interesting. Let's dive in right now. You've seen it a few times. What's your history with Hunchback?
Do you have a minute? I have an interesting history with this. So back in college, I went and worked at Walt Disney World through the Walt Disney World College program. And I ended up, I always loved Disney animation. So it was, when you do your little interviews and everything, I talked about my love for the animation and all that. I never wanted to be an animator, or I should say I never had the talent for being an animator. And, but they ended up putting me in Disney MGM Studios at the Magic of Disney Animation tour, where you get to it's like the fishbowl tour where you walk through and it's all the glass walls and you can see the animators at work and everything. It's a little different now,
oh, cool.
But you can see actual animators on the other side of the glass doing it. And you kind of walk through the whole process.
They were animatronics,
but
they said they were real.
They said they were, yeah, exactly. And then at the end, there's a theater and you get to watch clips and all that sort of stuff. So in the process of doing that, I ended up getting to talk to animators and all of that. And at the time, those in Florida were working on Mulan, but every week they would get to watch the dailies, and all of the animators would sit in the theater early in the morning and they would let us come watch. And so we could watch these dailies. And so we got to see Hunchback and Hercules and Fantasia 2000 and Tarzan and clips from all of these that they were working on, all in rough sketches and everything, some more complete than others. And then they were going to do a preview screening of Hunchback. And so they said we weren't allowed to go see that, but they said, if you go sneak into the booth, you can watch from up there. And so we did, and we got to see about the first 10 minutes of it. And then when the projectionist or somebody said, oh, you're not allowed to be up here. And so we had to leave. But getting to watch the beginning of the film, which is kind of just explosive, incredible, animation and storytelling, was a thrill for me. And so I was very excited about the movie. I've kind of always loved this movie. I acknowledge it has a lot of problems, but I've seen it a lot, and it's just one that I hold near and dear to my heart. I had the poster hanging up for years right over my computer. It has just been replaced a couple years ago with Everything Everywhere All at Once. And just to be extra nerdy, I also have this sitting on my desk, which, for everybody who can't see, it's actually a little, it's Esmeralda and Quasimodo sitting on top of the roof, and she's looking for his monster lines. So yes, I have that sitting on my desk. So yes,
You are the perfect person.
I'm a little bit of a nerd at this. I highly doubt this is going to be the pick that's going to win. I'm expecting it to be like last year where I go out last. Totally fine as long as I get to talk about the movie.
I do like your commitment to picking musicals most people forget exist when you join a show, as you did Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo. That's right.
Last season. Ryan, what is your incredibly personal and detailed history with the Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Oh, wow. Well, I was in a modeling program in college, and Disney called me because they said they had a character that looks just like me. And I was thinking like, oh, wow. So I went to Florida and got class credits. They started designing this character. I knew it was going to be the titular character of their 1996 classic, but I never saw or figured out what it was. This is my first time. This week was the first time seeing this movie.
Wow.
And I didn't find much to enjoy about it.
I'll say it might be, and which is hard if you really didn't like it. It might be a grower, not a show of a film, which is a hard argument if you watch it. Go, I'm an adult with a busy life. Why would I try to give this movie more chances?
I mean, when we talk about like the bars that movies set for themselves, sometimes you go for a single and hit a single. Sometimes you go for a home run and hit one. But this is like swung for the fences, tried to hit a home run. It bounced off the home run wall and then landed behind first base to just be a single. But the ball went far and then landed. And then the first baseman just picked up the ball and tagged this hunchback, not a good runner, out at first.
Well, sometimes, scene to scene, sometimes he's incredibly athletic and a great runner, but when the plot deems it, he no longer has any of that super athleticism.
Right.
Loved it as a kid. It wasn't like top tier, but like enjoyed it when we were sick of watching Lion King or Aladdin or Little Mermaid for the upteenth time. We're like, let's go back to Hunchback. Much more a fan of the live show at Disneyland. As Waterworld, the live show, is to the movie Waterworld, the Disney live show that was tucked away. It wasn't even easy to get to. You had to get lost and find your way in this weird villa behind like Big Thunder.
Wow.
This is for all the Southern Californians.
It's like where that mystery barbecue restaurant always was.
Yes, behind you turn right at the mystery barbecue restaurant, and you will find your way into what is the Carnival of Mysteries, Miracles.
The Court of Miracles.
Thank you, the Court of Miracles, and they do a show, and it was a delight. And I just realized I burned my recommendation, which is go back to the late '90s, early 2000s to watch a live show that hasn't existed in 20 years. And then Out There has a special place in my heart because it was on a Disney compilation I owned, and when I used to do road trips a lot in my early 20s, I would put that Disney compilation on and belt what I thought was amazing. But watching this again, man, does this Disney movie wish it was 1,000 other Disney movies, and it tried real hard to be those.
Yeah, did you watch Hunchback when you got sick of Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and Lion King to remember why you love those movies so much and then run right back to them?
We're gonna let's dive right in and make Andy defend himself for the next hour.
Oh, it is. It's gonna be great.
We're gonna take the quick breaks. When we come back, more Hunchback. In 1831, Victor Laverne Hugo released Notre Dame de Paris, which sprung from the need to defend the value of Gothic architecture. That's why he wrote this book. Hugo got rid of his clothes in order to finish the novel on time because after 2 years, he didn't actually want to sit down to write this book. Within, the 16-year-old Roma dancer Esmeralda is pursued by the captain of the guard Phoebus, the poet Pierre Gringoire, the archdeacon Frollo, and his deformed ward Quasimodo. The novel ends in tragedy, the last image being Quasimodo's skeleton wrapped around Esmeralda's dead body in a charnel house. Of course, it was adapted into film countless times, including the iconic 1923 version with Lon Chaney, which put Quasimodo in the pantheon of universal monsters because Hollywood doesn't give a damn about source material. Disney exec David Stainton thought this tale of lust, religious zealotry, infanticide, and genocide, and again, architecture, would make the perfect movie for children. No one stopped him, and a team was assembled, including two of the writers of Lion King, as well as Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz to handle the music. The top cast includes Dulce de Leche as Quasimodo, Demi Moore as Esmeralda, Kevin Kline as Phoebus, and Royal Shakespeare Company member Tony Jay as Frollo. Some elements of the original story were, of course, changed to make the movie G-rated, but a shocking amount of the sexuality and religious fervor stayed within. So, taste buds, I ask you this. The titular Notre Dame has almost as much screen time as the titular Hunchback. Is this the Disney movie that deals with religion the most head-on, and does it tumble, stumble, or royal rumble when handling religion?
What the fuck does that mean?
Royal Rumble.
What?
Wow. All right.
So,
It is not me to ask when the board hands me questions.
are you trying to just coin a new catchphrase? I mean, I guess I'll pick halfway between tumble and stumble because I don't know what you're talking about, Mike. Like, that was a ridiculous question.
Okay, but suss it out. What do you think?
I was shocked, frankly, to have all of these sides of religion instead of what I prefer, zero sides of religion in this movie. I know growing up that a lot of kids' entertainment just sort of took Christianity and going to church as sort of, well, it's like gospel. It was just a regular thing for kids to do in shows that I watched. But this one, man, like having the church be there and having it be this, place of not just worship, but sanctuary, I believe is a word that is repeated many times in this movie, and go sort of against Frollo, which I do believe stands for Friars Only Live Once. Frollo, as we see at the end when he dies, that he is doing everything for religion and yet is so against this church. I was kind of shocked by all of that just being put on Front Street.
Oh, yeah, it's an interesting blend of religion and politics that you definitely don't normally find in a Disney film. And I think that the religious angle that it's tricky because, obviously adapting Victor Hugo's works, you're pushing a lot of bounds in a lot of different directions with all the characters. And you're definitely dancing on this line between religious beliefs and everything, along with the politics of the day. And Judge Claude Frollo is certainly happy to do all of this stuff in the name of the church, but he's also just a judge. He's not really working with the church and just using his own beliefs to claim that they're right. And so it's an interesting way to kind of put all of this into a Disney story, which is definitely pushing bounds. And I think that's one of the things I appreciate with Disney actually trying to do something bigger and going down a road that you normally wouldn't see them go down. It's like they had done all these other great films that you've already rattled off, Mike, and then they're like,
it's time.
Let's do something that's more like a Les Mis Broadway show. Les Mis, hey, Victor Hugo, hey.
And I would say that this is lame as a Broadway show for sure.
Oh, it is brave for Disney, the giant corporation, to do this in the late 90s. Like, Jerry Falwell was huge. The 700 Club was on everybody's household every morning, I assume, not just mine.
Yeah.
It had a stranglehold, and to have that and the nuance of be like, oh, you can be a believer, quote unquote, and still be very anti-God, the way Claude Frollo is. But a couple other things are interesting. Is one that in the novel, Claude Frollo is a deacon of the church, and somebody high up in Disney went, "Dude, we
can't do that." Yeah, right.
And but on the mean streets of people who watch this movie, and by mean streets I do mean Main Street of any Disney park, the people who are vaguely remembering, they still remember Frollo as being the head of the church, even though this movie went out of its way to be like, nah, he was a judge. But you don't remember the friar guy who owns Notre Dame. And sure, the church isn't the villain here. It's just ineffectual. It just does nothing actual to protect anybody ever, which is another interesting commentary.
Well, yeah, I see some clear lines here, Mike. And I know that this movie feels very dated because the idea of having somebody doing very awful things, fascistic, oppressive things to people, but saying it's done all under the umbrella of religion, that's not something that we have anymore. Like we have not experienced that ever. And then to have the other side claim that it's good, but every time the oppressiveness creeps in, are just like, well, our hands are tied because we only follow the rules and there's nothing we can do.
Right.
That doesn't relate to me at all in 2024. So I was confused the entire movie.
It might be more prescient now, like more meaningful now than it was in the 90s. Do we think the creators knew what they were doing when they made this?
It's kind of a, not to mix metaphors, but it's kind of a tale as old as time. So, like all of this stuff applies to every generation, and we're surprised that it could happen to ours as we're watching it happen. But really, we could go back and find any story from any generation, and it tackles this. My confusion, though, like, I think so much of the things that I believe, the things that are important to me, my politics, whatever, are from watching and understanding Disney movies and children's movies and the difference between right and wrong. And I just want to go back and like, was that true for people who don't think like I do? They just related to Frollo more. They were just like, hell yeah, that guy's got it. That's who I want to grow up to be. That's the only explanation I can think of.
Well, for so many Disney cartoons, especially in this era where we are steeped in nostalgia and you're never allowed to think critically about the stuff you watched as a kid, people are like, the villain was right. I love this villain. And you can take any Disney movie, I mean any movie, but any Disney movie, and you're going to find somebody who's like, here's why Scar was actually the protagonist. Here's why Maleficent rules. There's not one Frollo defender in the world. They made a truly arch villain who is one-dimensional in the most perfect way they could have. If they try to humanize him, I'd be like, this movie's weak ass.
He's willing to burn families down. He's just torturing people in the basement. Like, take your time between the lashes so that it brings the pain out.
Dude.
More. Like, I mean, he even hates ants. I mean, he's just the worst.
And he knows where to find them, which is crazy. He's like, killing those 3 ants was not enough for me. I want more. I did myself the dishonor going onto Reddit and seeing, are there Frollo fans out there?
Oh, no.
And I did see a lot of people claim, not even in like a political way or an alt-right way, let's say, but that one of the reasons this movie stands up is because you can see it from both sides. Not that you necessarily agree with Frollo, but he had his bringing up, right? And Quasi had his bringing up, and that's just, we're all products of our environment. There are times where like he says something and then awful of like, burn the family in the house. If the family's not in the house, put them in the house and then burn it down. And then as he's walking away, none of the characters, but only we as the audience get to see him smile and fucking get aroused at the awful thing he just said. This is not about purity or God.
No.
Yeah, right.
And you can't argue, well, his bringing up was what it was, because Quasi's bringing up was by this person,
right,
who hates everything. So if we're saying this is all about nurture, then Quasimodo should be also
just as bad,
super into violence. Yeah.
And I mean, I think the first thing that we get post opening song, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe what's his name, Claudette, the clown, the head fool. Maybe his intro song comes. Clopin. His song comes after this. I can't remember, but like we see the two sides of religion fighting immediately. Like Frollo doing some of the most awful thing that I've ever seen in a Disney movie, which is knocking a woman over to her death and then going to kill the baby. And then the other guy saying, hey, that's not cool. That's not how we handle it. Like that's our introduction to not just these two characters, but the tone of the movie, the spirit of the movie is that. What the fuck? How did this get? Did this really get a G rating?
Shocking.
Yeah. A couple things to make it a G rating. In his song Hellfire, they had to turn the word sin down. Like it was too loud. So they're like, well, let's quiet sin down. They didn't change the lyrics. And then the hair sniffing, which is, we'll talk about that later. But those two things, I mean, a lot more had to change, but those were two big ones.
Yeah. They had to also draw in the bust line of the fire version of Esmeralda's dress.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise it looked like she was naked. So,
and that song Hellfire, which is people rarely talk about the music. It's hard not to jump around. But Hellfire, I think, hits it hurts him. It hurts everybody. He knows it. Like the violence is also on himself, and he's into all of that. And it hits like Salem witch trials stuff. Like you made me feel a thing, so I'm going to use God as a cudgel.
Yeah. No, well, and that's, I mean, the whole idea of what Frollo is trying to do. And like, I think that it's an interesting character because there is some twisted complexity within him. I mean, he is very one note as far as his villainy, as far as just like wipe everyone out who's not as good as me, is basically his edict through the entire film. But it's because of whatever that twisted thing is that's going on inside of him, which I think is fascinating, and especially in its portrayal in that song when you have all of those like hellfire figures rising up out of the flames and everything. It's like his judge and jury like right there kind of weighing him down and watching his every move. And it's a fascinating way to kind of depict all of this. And yeah, it's like, what was Disney thinking? I don't get it. But at the same time, that's what I love about this film. And that's why it stands out to me, because it's like they were, and I mean, yeah, they were aiming for the fences. They hit a big one. I think that it, for me, I was happy that it got as far as it did, because it's like, I wanted to see Disney trying to do something more and not just kind of the same old stuff. And yes, they still had to throw some of the same old stuff in here that they think is what the kids want. But it's like, and that's for me is like, if they had just gone full big and said, you know what, let's make it an adult animated film and just go, let's do an R-rated thing and see what happens. Then, I mean, wow, it could have been,
because the
amazing.
The more it leans into that and dealing with like the tyranny of religion and authoritarianism, the better it is. And the more you get Jason Alexander doing a Pumbaa impression, the worse this movie
is. It Pumbaa or Genie or Eddie Murphy's Dragon hadn't come out yet, but like, it's just this, their big ideas are very interesting. And like, that's why it might seem like all three of us love this movie throughout this show, because we're not going to focus on the bad shit. But when those gargoyles come in, man, like it cripples the movie. And I know that there are tropes that all Disney movies have, even though it has nothing to do with the film. Rapunzel has to have a chameleon. It doesn't talk, but it's just the way it works. Nobody knows why. This was, it was such a fucking anchor right in the middle of the ship.
And it's this anchor is one of the first things they had. They're like, well, he's going to have 3 gargoyle friends he talks to. Yeah. Because there's a line in the actual novel of saying very much that, like his only friends were the stones.
And
he talks to them. Right.
I know we're not that kind of show, but what are the rules here? Is it Toy Story rules? They freeze when Frollo comes in, but then they're not in Quasi's imagination, because they are responsible for so many kills in the third act.
Yeah,
like that's them doing it, right?
Well, and it's like I mean, I know Quasi is strong, but still, it's like every time Frollo comes up, doesn't he go, why are the gargoyles over here now? Weren't they like over there? And shouldn't they be on the edges of the parapets doing whatever gargoyles do? Like, yeah, it's just such a strange decision.
Are we to believe that Quasi got strong from being able to Spider-Man through the top of that church? Or is Disney doing a thing of like, if you have issues...
Oh, it's barbarian.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
2023's barbarian specifically is what I'm referencing, people. If you have some sort of physical deformity, it also means you are massively as strong as 10 foot.
God doesn't give with both hands, but he'll at least give with one. So
one giant weird Hellboy-sized hand. All right, we are going to take the quiz breaks, and when we come back, talk about the entirety of Disney's catalog. Taste buds, let's take a step back from the Hunchback of Notre Dame and put it in context a little within what the historians like to call the Disney Renaissance. And pre-1989, there's different eras of Disney animation. And pre-1989, I think there was like a 25-ish year lull of Disney just putting out dog shit. Is that accurate? And do you agree?
I mean, I will say that before this Renaissance that you are talking that you're talking about, I had a very Disney-filled childhood with movies that came out 50 years before I was born. Like, there wasn't any, almost no like registering on my radar as a kid of the actual current Disney movies. Disney used to do this thing that was more common back in the day of releasing each movie every 7 years in theaters. And so we would, as a family, bypass whatever's new to go see what was ever old. So like huge impact on my life, but just not with whatever they were currently making. Like it was clear that it was a well-renowned name and word, and it had a certain quality, just not what its current output was.
So next year, you're about to see Fox and the Hound for the first time because it's going to hit theaters.
Is that true?
No, I'm just saying that would have been the era that I think when you were a kid.
Yes,
that you didn't see.
I think I've seen that barely, but there are so many from that era. I mean, like we did Robin Hood a couple seasons ago. Such a big movie for you on that show, Mike. I had barely seen it, I think. So like, and that's long before I was born. Let's make that clear. But as Mike said, it was a 25-year dearth.
It's crazy how long, right?
Well, I mean, because Disney died, that's a thing that happened, unfortunately. And I think that they were also, as the studio, trying to save money. And so they started using the photocopy method, which is where we ended up getting kind of this style that was like Jungle Book and 101 Dalmatians, Aristocats, all of that, where it's all real sketchy. And because they're just using these photocopies to instead of doing the fine hand tracing of everything, they kind of came up with a way to do it cheaper, which I think gave those films a really cool look. And I think that they also were struggling trying to figure out what are we doing now that Walt is dead, and trying to find the right path for the stories. And they made some, they did make some that I think stand out, but also I think that they were, again, kind of in an experimenting stage of trying to figure out what kind of animated movies should we do? Hey, let's adapt this Black Cauldron book and see what happens. The kids will love it. And yeah, we've got a skeleton-headed monster as the protagonist who is bringing back zombies. It's like, sure,
yes.
let's throw that into the mix. And so I think that they did some really interesting things that they were trying, but it was a struggle for them to get to the point where we hit that renaissance in 89.
I think it's important to note too that Disney's live action group has kind of always been, as Mike put it, dog shit. Like they were always releasing absolute crap. And I think that they had no idea how much of their, not just money coming in, but like their name was built on these animated quote unquote classics, because these movies like the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes or whatever, like there's hundreds of Disney movies that appeal to the specific year that you were born, but like you've never heard of them. These live action ones, if you were born in a different era, and so those were hemorrhaging money, but it didn't matter as much because the animated classics were bringing so much in. And when those stopped bringing so much money in, then it was like, what the fuck are we doing here?
And then I think Eisner was in charge-ish, and correct me, it feels like maybe Andy should explain this part. And then for the Renaissance, Roy Disney, who was the nephew and had left, came back in and was just like, let me fix your shit, Eisner.
Look at my last name.
Michael Eisner, not Will Eisner.
Yeah, Michael Eisner.
The bad Eisner. And then we got a Renaissance. So maybe you do need some nepotism and need that family magic touch.
Well, and Eisner did a lot of the repairs too. Like he was trying to figure out what can we do, and I mean he did a lot of good things for the company and got some things working. But yeah, I think that to your point, Ryan, the live action has always been kind of rough. And I mean, even I think this same year for Hunchback, isn't this the year that Flubber came out, which I think was big the year, but it's like, who talks about Flubber these days?
Right.
Like nobody brings Flubber up anymore. And I think that's kind of, the problem is that maybe they're focused on making things current that'll attract an audience of the day, but largely nothing that they do really has legs.
I think that the biggest difference between the two, at least in my, watching Lifetime and keeping like my thumb on the pulse of pop culture as it is, it feels like that the live action movies were just so disposable, and the classics were so timeless. And once they forgot that part and they were just ripping off animated quote unquote classics, but were kind of disposable, then that's when it all started falling apart, and they lost that like sheen, that like the Disney vault, and the whole idea of like there's Disney and there's everybody else. It's not children's TV, it's Disney BO. I think that's when it sort of like lost its luster.
Until 1989, with a little movie called The Little Mermaid. I wish I hadn't said little that first time. And then everything changed for about a decade. We are going to determine what the best movie of the Disney Renaissance is, because it's argued a lot and there's a clear answer, and we will find that clear answer. And if you listen to me and say, hey, Mike, some of the movies you said aren't in the Disney Renaissance period, I had to get to 16 movies, motherfucker. So I had to add a couple at the end who slipped in who maybe don't belong here.
And I do like Disney Renaissance is so important, I think, to all three of our lives and for generations after us. But
yeah,
it was not as long lived as you might think. There is a certain year that most Disney scholars will say that it ended, but like The Lion King made $500 million in America, and no Disney movie would make that again for 16 years. Like there was a steep drop off. So like they were kind of running on reputation even after or during the Renaissance.
Yeah, there's some movies that I'm like, when you see how long the Renaissance is, there's some movies I'm like, that counts as well, we're gonna dive right in. Here's how the battles will work. It is the oldest versus the newest, and that's just how we're doing it. So your first battle is The Little Mermaid, the one that started the Renaissance, versus Treasure Planet, probably the one that double tapped the zombie Renaissance that was already on failing legs.
Let's start with this. Has anybody seen Treasure Planet?
No.
Yes. I've seen everything that they've done except for Wish, their most recent one, because it looked so bad.
I bet you it's better than Treasure Planet.
It's Treasure Planet actually has a lot of good stuff going for it, believe it or not. But it's no Little Mermaid. Let's just say that.
I mean, the things that you see in Little Mermaid, a movie that over the last 4 years or so, for no reason, I have seen 1,000 times. It's crazy to watch. I think we did a show on it, Mike, right?
Yes. If we did 89, we did The Little Mermaid.
Maybe we did it in our previous podcasting lives, but I know that we've talked about it. And the animation is still not up to just a couple years after that. But there's something there. Like they sort of, it didn't just Renaissance Disney, it Renaissance the princesses. And, like it had been like 40 years or something, 30 years since the last princess. And now we have this idea again. And that was just so, like, it just brought the fans in droves.
But they injected the princess with personality. They modernized her enough while still it stays timeless. But now she has an attitude, and you can't tell me what Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty are like as people. But you can describe Ariel.
Until she stops talking, but yeah.
Until she stops.
Yeah, a movie.
So they had some old things in their heads.
Yeah. A movie about how when women finally stop talking, they can get what they want. Way to go.
And if they get those gams.
If you look at Sebastian versus Hugo, as far as like characters go, like, I mean, Sebastian, there's so many fully fledged, or Scuttle, like these are people who can hold their own in a scene. And that's just not what I see in Hunchback.
Yeah. And it's also a film that warrants having like those friends and sidekicks,
right?
And everything,
they don't feel forced.
Yeah, right. That's really the issue in this one. That's just like they're just so incredibly forced in, this pushing those things on us. But Treasure Planet also has some of those, which can be a little annoying. But at its core, I mean, it's Treasure Island, and the relationship between the pirate and the kid is actually a really strong one. So it actually has a strong story because it's based on a strong book. But again, Little Mermaid just really, I mean, out of the gate, it's just like they came up with something that was, again, it is adapted, but they really changed it quite a bit. And so they made a story that is just like full of rich and interesting characters. And it's just one that really holds its own.
We're going to get to this later with Hunchback, and I'm sure all of these movies. This is a really, really important part about Disney movies, even over other musicals, is what are the songs that you have? And Little Mermaid might have 3 of the top 20 of all time.
Well, they pulled not out of obscurity, but out of Broadway obscurity. They pulled the composer and lyricist from Little Shop of Horrors, and went like, "What if?" Because the songs, even in the Golden Age, the songs suck. Who wants to listen to Bambi's "Little Drops of Flowers," April Showers bullshit? Those songs blow. And it's in my head forever. But Sleeping Beauty, like they're not great. And they were like, "What if we gave our new movies like Broadway-sized in style songs?" And also, each movie, even if it had nothing to do with the place that the film takes place, has a kind of sonic identity, and that starts here.
So part of your world, Poor Unfortunate Souls, Kiss the Girl. Sorry, just the one girl. Don't kiss the girls. Those are all timers.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, they were very smart of bringing Ashman and Menken in to do that. And, they would keep that team around for a few more films before Ashman sadly died. And then Menken, I think he is still one, I don't even know how many Oscars that guy's won, but he's won so many Oscars all because of all these Disney songs that he was cranking out. So that's, your point is a very astute one, because yes, the songs are a huge and critical part of the success of these.
Does Treasure Planet have songs?
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
The songs are so good in Little.
That was.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it was. I think that was about the point where they were like, we need to figure out how to get away from this mold and try to move past what we've been doing. And so it was in a run, starting with, I think, Emperor's New Groove, which was a story in and of itself as far as like the songs, and then getting rid of all the songs and everything, and then like they kind of moved away from songs for a while before Treasure Planet was a huge box office bomb, and then they went back to songs. So it's back and forth. It's like they don't understand that if you just focus on making something good, then you'll have a good product. But they just are like, oh, this is what people want. No, this is what people want. And then
if you dazzle people that are into musicals, right, whether it's live action or animation, if you dazzle them with the songs, they'll deal with almost anything else. Bad animation, bad storytelling in the in-between. Mike, I have to ask, the age that you were when Treasure Planet came out, I can't imagine you being like, Treasure Island is now Treasure Planet? I'm there on opening day.
It seems like I should be, but I think this was late middle school or early high school for me, which means there was a 4 or 5 year period where I was like, oh, I'm not seeing Disney movies, and this landed in that.
For some people, it's 25 years, but you had 4 years.
I had 4 or 5, and then I was like, be true to yourself, Mike. It's time to vote. My guess is Little Mermaid all across the board.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
100%.
Let's do that. Your next battle is Hercules versus Mulan. Both late 90s. We are later in the Renaissance now.
And Mike, real quick, should have clarified this before. We are speaking for the world, right? This is not our opinion. This is not what movie is better. It's just we're picking the definitive post-Renaissance.
Damn it. Yeah.
I know that does make this more difficult.
The weight on my shoulders suddenly.
It is. Ryan, I think, is saying that because you and I have bonded over our love of Hercules, or at least one specific character.
Yeah, it's not Hercules.
We are in love with this character, Meg, and just the way she says Herc.
Yeah, it's like you're drawn like a princess, a Disney princess, with the hair though, with the flat, almost like Wilma Flintstone hair, but have this like Mae West sort of accent. You are in ancient Greece, and you're like, wow, come up and see me sometime. And for some reason, Mike and I are like, hello, let me pick my heart up off the floor.
But also you have Danny DeVito doing great animal-ish sidekick, and Pegasus doing good animal sidekick. James Woods is a phenomenal Hades.
He's fantastic.
Gospel into music. I was a Greek myth kid, surprising nobody here. So I loved it, but it was like, well, it's not very accurate.
To these other fake stories that were...
Yes.
Right. This was one I had a lot of fun with, but I enjoy the music, but the music also, some of it started sounding a little too poppy for me as far as some of the songs, and nothing against Meg, because I do enjoy her character, but her song I really didn't care for at all. But I think there were a lot of interesting things happening with the film. It didn't end up being the film that I was hoping it was going to be, but I still enjoyed it.
I would say Hercules, to me, it hits, like we were talking about with Scuttle and Sebastian, like hits all the Disney tropes in an organic way. Like Danny DeVito's there, but like there's a reason for him to be there. Of this run of Hercules and Mulan and Hunchback, and then a couple of others that we haven't talked about yet, this is the one where I could say like, oh, this makes sense that you would make this. Not a 1,000-page Victor Hugo novel, but like this
Right.
fits into your fairy tale stuff that you guys are so good at. And I really love that about it. It's just that Mulan became sort of something else, like Mulan became just that, like, even if we have to dress her as a man, this is how we're going to do a female lead, mixed with all the Disney additive of, let's try to recapture Robin Williams with Eddie Murphy. I do think that Hercules is a better movie, but I do think that Mulan's impact on culture today, disregarding its flawed live action remake, it's hard to argue for Hercules here.
And there is, I think, not just epicness in story, but more because Hercules deals with the end of the world. But Mulan, there's an epicness in the animation and a gravitas. Like Eddie Murphy is cracking wise, and there's funny moments, but they let Mulan be serious and say, well, our people might be wiped out. And that means more than Hercules being like, oh, geez, I need my dad to love me. And if he doesn't love me, then the universe dies. And that's somebody who loves that movie.
Yeah.
And for Mulan to like have the gravitas to be like, oh, we have this like male, very strong Asian general in an army. Let's go get fucking Donny Osmond to do the voice. That is what we need. I mean, how do you argue with that?
Mulan also, like, as a father of a young girl, when we watched it together, was like hard to argue the impact that the story has on young girls who see so much of what they can accomplish. Even if in this case of the story, she has to pose as a guy to do it. But the idea, I think, is such a strong one. And I think that's why the story of Mulan has been such an age-old tale that they've been telling. But yeah, Hercules, the animation style, if I was voting on animation style, I'd pick Hercules, because that style that they chose to do Hercules in is stunning. But Mulan for me is the pick. And the sequence, even just like when all of the Huns are storming
the arrows, all those arrows.
They launch the cannon to blast them and bury them in snow. Like it's a great ride.
Not just as the father of a very young daughter, but as the very old, like way too old to have a daughter my age. That also helps. Like this crippled old dad in Mulan, he and I see each other. Like we get it.
All right, Andy, your vote is Mulan.
I am voting Mulan. Yes.
Right, guy. Also Mulan.
Also Mulan. It hurts.
Mulan moves on. Sorry, Tate Donovan. Friend of the show. Your next battle is Aladdin up against 2000's Dinosaur. And as somebody who has two of them tattooed on me, been obsessed with my whole life, I never seen this, don't know what this is, don't believe it exists. Who can tell me about this movie?
Oh, wow. This is, well, first of all, like, this is why the bracket is so hard, because some of them are such equal challengers. They have the exact impact on the future and the past, and I have no idea where we're going to go here. But I think that Dinosaur was like, Disney was like, we don't need to Foley buy Pixar. Like, they could do their thing, we could do our thing, trying to do their I believe first. Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, Foley CGI, no cell movie.
Well, and also not only that, but they shot it on like the live backgrounds. So they have like real scenery that they kind of put these dinosaurs into and everything. So it's an interesting film to look at. It's it's a film that's interesting to watch because of the technological work that they were trying to develop and consider as breakthroughs with the film. It's not necessarily a great film. It has its moments, but and especially for people who are fans of dinosaurs, one of the big issues with it is that I don't remember all the different dinosaurs in the different periods, but they said, don't worry about that. We're just going to put them all together and I know a lot of dinosaur
hits.
experts, like because there are some primates also with all the dinosaurs that he ends up befriending, and
So it's another biblical movie.
Well, fiction.
yes. They're all together.
They never existed.
Exactly.
I first of all, I think it's weird that there's a movie based on that one tiny section of the Disneyland Railroad where you go in and it starts to stink, and you see just the most realistic looking dinosaurs you've ever seen. Also, I gotta say, and this is gonna date me too. That everyone's gonna know when I'm born. We had The Land Before Time. Don't know if we needed this. Like we had our dinosaur movie, and I am not that surprised that chubby bowl-cutted Disney fan Mike has no idea this movie existed. Like it's
in the period.
Much like dinosaurs, it is lost to time.
Aladdin clearly is going to win. We're not going to vote, but I do want to say one of the clear where Hunchback is like, well, we're just going to do what worked. Is Clopin being the narrator? Sort of is the genie's alter ego. When Robin Williams is just like improvising, is like Julianne Fries. They're like, oh, we need to do that again. Let's do it with somebody with zero charisma. And it just does not work.
Is Clopin voiced by a famous person?
I don't believe so.
No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
They should have gotten I don't know, Bobcat Goldthwait. No, they'd get him for Hercules. What other comedian from this era could they have gotten to be Clopin?
Jeff Dunham.
Jeff Dunham.
Paula Poundstone.
Yes, Paula Poundstone should have played Clopin. And then maybe we would remember anything he sounds like. So Aladdin moves on.
Aladdin moves on.
I mean, yeah. Is there any Aladdin haters? Like I tried to be for a while because Robin Williams is too much, but
it's hard to hate. I think when Aladdin came out, I think that I do remember myself thinking that I was a little irritated that they were allowing one of the actors to, as much as I love Robin Williams, but to bring in so many modern references that didn't keep it in its time period. I've since gotten over that, but I know I did have those thoughts at the time, and so some people may still feel that way.
I'm glad you have gotten over it.
Way about some of their more recent films too. So
I'm glad you have gotten over it, but I would find it hilarious if you had not, and you were just still so upset about it.
I've written countless letters to Disney.
Oh.
All right, our last battle in round one before we have to take a break to go back to talking about Hunchback is 1994's, and this might be the first one that hurts a little. 1994's The Lion King versus 2002's Lilo and Stitch.
Look, listeners, when we do a bracket, the first round is about getting stuff out. I don't know what to tell you, but sometimes it's going to get tougher later. But for right now, again, Lilo and Stitch was not a movie I saw until very recently, until I think we did a bonus episode for our 02 season. And it's good. It has a lot of cute parts. The Lion King is...
It was so fun and cute.
The Lion King is a vital movie of the 90s. It's in the top 10 most important movies of the 90s. Not Disney movies. Movies.
Lion King, absolutely. Lilo and Stitch is... Yeah, I enjoy it. I think if I was a young kid who saw it at the time, I would probably be attached to it. But it just, my kids enjoyed it, but I was, it's fine. I've always kind of felt that way with it.
It's similar to me to Hercules, even though they're very different kinds of stories. But there's some Disney movies where they just let themselves be fun, which is great. But there's a weightlessness to them then that when they're going up against these heavier hitters, that it isn't just that they mean something because how old we were when they came out. There was an effort put into these big epic tales, even if they're a big epic tale about romance like The Little Mermaid. That this is it's a fun movie about family and aliens
for sure. And
come on,
and we didn't know when we saw Lion King that it was based on anything. I think that this was the first time I went to a Disney movie or watched a Disney movie that I thought it was original. We learned later that it was Hamlet, but Lilo and Stitch, which I don't believe is based on anything. There's that sort of takes away to the levity, but also what you're saying is that Lion King is basically in the Disney oeuvre Lionance of Arabia, and Lilo and Stitch is essentially a hangout movie. There is a little bit of Act 1 and a little bit of Act 3, and then you're just fucking surfing and singing Elvis songs, and that does make it hard to compare the epicness to the hangout.
Yeah, and it is a really fun idea. I love that they came up with something original and did something really clever with it. And but yeah, it's just so hard to top Lion King on this list. Really is.
I don't know if there's ever been such damning with faint praise on this show. So I was talking about Lilo and Stitch.
I do want to
Lion King.
I do want to shout out real quick that my dog has like a weird way of looking like Stitch, and my daughter was obsessed with this movie, so we were going to dress them as Lilo and Stitch for Halloween. And then my dog died, and it was the most awkward Halloween costume to drag that Stitch around all night.
Fuck you.
Like, people were giving us... It is a way to get extra candy, though. I will say that.
I want the record to show Andy got extra points. Ryan got a point for vulnerability and bravery and disgustingness, but then Andy got extra points. Wow.
What a turn.
Let's take a break. We will return to this bracket. And then when we return, more Hunchback of Notre Dame. Taste buds, as we said, Hunchback deals with some pretty heady stuff. Like sin, redemption, and the horniest of villains. Do these things feel explained to kids or kept over their heads so they don't notice? Is this, and I'm not sure how to ask, maybe too horny for a kids movie?
My daughter tried to watch this, and she is almost 4, like a year ago, let's say, and right away she was like, absolutely not. This is none of the things that I enjoy about Disney. And it was very scary. Like, there's a lot of scary stuff even when it's not being scary. It's just a different, darker movie. And so I had to wait till she went to bed to watch a Disney movie, which is weird. And I could not believe, like, Frollo has got some shit going on at all times. But then when he sings a song about his sacrilegious boner, that I could not believe that happened.
Hellfire is the blood pumping down.
My whole point of that is, like, maybe, Andy, are your kids older? Do they know? Is this stuff going over their heads?
That's a great question. I watched the entire Disney canon with my kids, animated canon, and then I like letterboxed each one. And I think I started when my son was like 4 or 5. So he was pretty young when we were watching these. By the time we hit Hunchback, maybe he was, 6 or something. So he was still young. They didn't have any questions for me.
Okay, good.
Afterward. So I guess that is good. But yeah, I have to imagine that things were going over their heads. It just seems like there's some things that is happening here. I mean, we have Esmeralda doing her gypsy dance early they really emphasize the shadow work on her body as she does that.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Kind of like highlight her curves and everything. And I mean, I guess to a certain extent, it's like Disney princesses, they've always kind of kept them looking very, a nice figure and everything. But I definitely felt like with Esmeralda, they were emphasizing that because you needed that because of Frollo and because he has this holy boner of his that he's holding for.
If
her.
we're just starting with Esmeralda, is she Disney's version of like a sex worker? Like, is that?
Well, it is. Clopan, when he introduces her in the maybe also why your daughter didn't like this, Ryan. There's 4 beginnings. So in the 4th beginning, which feels like finally the true beginning, Clopan does say, and now the part you've all been waiting for. Esmeralda's going to dance, and then she dances sensuously. And I think this is the moment. It might be a different part where there's a pole. Like, there just is pole dancing in this children's movie.
Yep.
I thought you were going to say for sure that this is the part, of course, where little Mikey's balls dropped as hard as they ever have.
No, that would be next year's 1997's Hercules. I'll push back because, Andy, you said maybe she has to be drawn this way, a la Jessica Rabbit, because of Frollo's holy boner. But I creeps in power don't need an excuse. They're going to find a person and prey on them, right?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, in context of we're going to have this as our villain, so
right.
It's just let's make sure that the shadows are emphasizing all the right things when she does her dance, because it needs to just because I mean even Phoebus is just like, what a woman.
Yeah, he says, "Look at the disgusting display," and Phoebus says, "Yes, sir." Right. Funny joke, Hunchback. You really got me there.
Kevin Kline is his voice, by the way, doing his best impression of Kevin Kline. Did not change his voice one iota for this, but this movie had Frollo as a bad guy, and that's like, it's such a evil name to read but not to say. Like, if you see it in the subtitles, like, that's a bad guy, but then when you say his name is Frollo, that's ridiculous. To add this other thing of like, oh god, it's her fault that I want to fuck this heathen. That's all. Those are choices that this movie, if not based on the book, is making. Also, we haven't even pointed out, like, this is before the song. She has to stand there while he smells her hair as hard as he can.
And they turned the sniffing sound down to get from a PG to a G. True story.
That's factual.
His nostril size, though, didn't have to change.
No, he got all that scent right up in that nose. It's like, again, this movie is more nuanced than you think until you start thinking about it, because it's doubly fucked up. She's a Roma person, so it's of a people he wants to wipe out from the face of the city, if not the earth. And so he's even more into her because it's even a bigger sin. This is a complex children's movie for so many reasons.
Most of the, not all of, but definitely Esmeralda and some others are definitely, their skin tone is darker than your average Parisian, right? And they are outcast because it says that, like, because they do magic, and there are points where, like, Esmeralda is doing magic. Like, I don't know how she could have David Copperfield her way from point A to point B on the stage, but it's also
camera tricks.
It's clearly because they played it in reverse.
That's right.
But also, they're not paying taxes. That's really the big deal here, right? I mean, it's unsaid, but like, they are, if you're begging on the street, you don't have a social security number, they're not paying taxes. That's what the big problem is.
Yeah, it's just the nature. I mean, it's gypsies, and just the nature of, any time people have used gypsies as an excuse for anything, it's all of the same sort of stuff. And
yeah, because I remember in probably the year 1996, my very racist Nana, I was going to say God rest her soul, but I don't believe any of that. So no, she was just,
and she's still alive.
Warned me about the gypsies.
Wow.
And I had never met one. I didn't accept a movie, and I think they dance cool and dress cool. And you're wrong, Nana. Roma people are fine folks.
I hosted the show.
If you kill their daughter, they will come up to your face and say thinner, and then you'll just lose weight till you die. So watch out.
That is good of you, Mike, to get out there on that limb and say that. Are we to? Is the G word just like? Is that not allowed?
I think in talking about this movie, it'd be hard not to say it because they say it a bajillion times. But I think if you're talking about the people, we say Roma now.
Yeah,
Roma. They are Roma. They are Romani.
They are Romani.
Okay, I'm not even sure what that means, but I think it's very clear that they are sort of, their whole ethos is anti-establishment, and sort of the whole ethos of not maybe all religion, but all religion. But definitely Frollo is establishment. So really, what your issue is just that like, they're not bending the knee, and so therefore they have to get got. And I think that if you're Frollo, it's such a ridiculous name. If you're the judge, if you're Claude, you go through so many phases of hate that you really start to back yourself up and say, no, it is my duty to get rid of these people, even though it started as the most racist, thinly veiled bullshit of all time.
It starts racist in the first of too many intros. No, the second. It's the second of too many intros. We're now flashbacking to Quasimodo's entryway into Paris. He's like, get them, because they're brown. Also, she has a bundle. She probably stole that from somebody. Make her throw that right on the ground.
Yeah,
it's a baby.
She probably stole that bundle, which is like probably 10 gold bricks and a loaf of bread. And so we have to get her. And then when it's a baby, he does not think about the baby's dead mom. He's just like, ew, baby, where's my nearest well?
and again, just being like, Disney, you're being brave, because it's so much, because Frollo, so okay, he's not church, but he's in law enforcement. And it's like, oh, is that person of color holding something? Probably bad. Let's kill them.
Holding a thing.
Disney?
Are they holding a noun? Get them.
Now it's crazy how, like you said earlier, how this feels like a story of today, and it's just funny to kind of like think about that in context of where we are and where we've suddenly ended up in society. But yeah, I feel like there are some interesting things that they were. I don't know. I'm curious. Like, was Disney actually trying to tackle some feelings of present 96 at the time within society in this story, or were they just using it as a way to just kind of, or were they just telling Victor Hugo's story? But I feel like, I don't know, I can't help but think that they recognized that there were elements that connected to today's society.
And we should be,
especially in the late 90s. Clinton, the tough on crime Democrat, is the one who was like not the first, but he closed the border in a way that made immigration harder and rougher, and folks who used to come from Mexico to work, they used to return, but in the way he closed the border, they were trapped here and could no longer see their families. Yeah. And then the Republicans really took that torch and ran with it through today. We're like, look at all these immigrants coming and doing magic and dancing, and we hate them.
Yeah,
Ryan, were you going to say something?
Sure. I want to the whole idea of, and we've talked about the religion, but the whole idea of having Frollo have any attachment to religion too is, I think, such a big part of it. That's, I think, the ballsiest moment for the movie, even though it does say that good religion is good, which I don't want to see. Mm-hmm. The bad religion or the change of religion is bad. And that is, I mean, that is where we get this song. That is where the other question though is like, where do we get this version of Esmeralda? Because we don't see, in all of the flaws that Ariel has, in all of the flaws, Belle's pretty perfect, but in some of the,
she's a little stuck up.
She is. I mean, she reads fucking books. All right. Like, just get it, like, do audiobooks or something, Belle. But Esmeralda, I do think, is sort of the centerpiece of the movie. And the sexuality of her, does that hold her back from being like the clear main character, the perfect person?
I think this is where it's interesting, because she is more the main character in the novel, and this is there's the run
despite her not having a hunchback,
right?
Yeah.
But maybe it's not necessarily run, but it's clear in the Disney Renaissance, Aladdin, Lion King, Hunchback, Tarzan, Hercules, they're trying to be like, let's get the boys. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think even though they had the story they were basing on, the female character was the lead. They're like, let's make it Quasimodo. Oh, but he's alone a lot, so let's give him the 3 stupidest sidekicks any movie's ever had to have, so he can talk to anybody.
And real quick, Mike, just to refresh my memory, they didn't have a mega hit after Lion King until 2010. You remember what that was?
2000, was that Tangled?
And they didn't have a mega hit for a couple years after that. You know what that was?
Frozen.
But it was the story of Frozen, the origin of a Pixar character. But I mean, that just goes to show how but every time we make a incredible movie about a woman, that's the anomaly. Let's get back to men that people don't care about. And that's harsh for Quasi. I do think that he's a good lead, but I do feel like there's some fear of dealing with Esmeralda here that we don't have with Ariel. Like, oh, she's a woman and she's magic and she's a Romani and she's curvy.
She has agency.
Yeah,
and she's curvy.
She makes decisions. She goes against the law, and there's a little fear there, I feel.
Well, there's also a fear in allowing, and again, obviously they're completely throwing the book to the side, but a fear in allowing a person with a physical deformity to actually be the love interest for her.
Right.
And saying, well, no, they end up just being friends because she has to end up with the hunky soldier.
This is something I thought about, but if she did deny Phoebe, what's his name?
Phoebus.
Phoebus.
It means sun god.
If she ended up denying Phoebus Buffet, and then started dating Quasi, wouldn't we have rolled our eyes at that?
Woke. I don't know what that word means yet, but woke. It's the theme of the movie does kind of be, because at the end, this movie treats Quasimodo like shit, that the townspeople really do. But then he saves her. So if you save the city's girlfriend, it doesn't matter if you're ugly. Is what the moral of this is.
Yes, we'll love you now.
And I feel like there's so many movies that I'm going to reference Wet Hot American Summer, but so many movies that are like, you're the hero of this movie, but the other guy's hot, so he will be my
but
boyfriend.
I'm 16 and he's hot.
If we had to make this like a perfect ending, it would have been Phoebus with Laverne, Esmeralda with Hugo, and Quasi with Victor. And that is, they should have just been humping statues for the rest of the movie.
Then Disney would have been really brave.
Yeah, right.
Before we move on, is there any aspect of horned-upness that we have not talked about yet?
I mean, I feel like we've definitely hit it. There are a few lines like Phoebus, like "What a woman" and
"What
yes,
a woman,"
sir, and I mean, Frollo. I mean, pretty much any time Frollo's on screen, but I mean, it really boils down to the Hellfire sequence, where it's just, which I mean, it's stunning animation, and this again really speaks to why animation can be such a powerful medium to tell stories, because the way they use the figures rising up and everything, and just crafting that scene. I mean, it's beautifully done. It gives it like some really interesting religious iconography, while also allowing the fire version of Esmeralda to just be full on sex kitten.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, they really kind of push in a lot of directions to, drive everything up with him, and like building to the. It still is a funny line to me, but when Frollo sees Phoebus the next morning, he's like, "Rough night. I had trouble with the fireplace." Like it just,
and he looks hungover. His eyes are red. Like what?
Hungover.
What did you do?
Yeah. Well, he fell over and just landed on his, his little soldier.
Towards the end, Frollo finds Quasi's little Esmeralda model, like his little toy, and like, "Oh God, you made this? How embarrassing for you! I've only been singing and jerking off at the same time all night to this woman, but look at what you made."
But it's creepy when you do it. All right, we're gonna take a breather, take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, more Disney Bracket. Let's dive right back in, gents. Starting with your number 2 seed. Chronological order. I'd say the most forgotten, especially of the early Disney Renaissance, The Rescuers Down Under versus The Emperor's New Groove.
The Rescuers Down Under reminds me of like what Marvel's sort of doing now is like we're going to fix stuff. We're going to get better. But unfortunately, we have a couple more things to release that suck. And so I know you guys love The Little Mermaid. We're just going to do The Rescuers Down Under real quick, and then we'll move out. It is the only movie in the end credits of Wish that is not represented.
What?
They chose one movie, The Rescuers Down Under, to not represent it at all.
Come on, Wish.
Why? I wonder why. Did they have a reason? Did they say?
I think it, like Mike said, it's just the most forgotten movie.
Even they forgot about like The Great Mouse Detective before the Renaissance, but is remembered because it's like what killed it was the death knell before they fixed everything.
Right. And so it does.
But Rescues Down Under.
But like Chicken Little is there. A cow from Home on the Range is there. So
that's not a real
they
movie.
did it all.
Yeah, Rescuers Down Under has its moments, and it was in that period where I enjoy watching little bits and pieces because of what they were trying to do, like learning with the CG, like Great Mouse Detective, that clock fight, like it's freaking awesome watching them running around in all the gears inside the back of the clock, the way that the CG animation did.
I thought they were just throwing clocks at each other, and that was the fight.
Like, take that, you. But in Rescuers Down Under, it's that like it starts off and you see Uluru, the big rock out in the middle of Australia, and then it's just like that it's like the didgeridoo and the drums and everything, and you just have like this crash zoom across the fields right up into the rock up to the farm where the kid lives and everything. And just the way that they used the CG to kind of craft the landscape and everything was really, really cool. So it has its moments. I love the eagle, like the eagle design and everything is really cool. But Emperor's New Groove was like a breakthrough for me in Disney doing like just straight up wacky comedy. And it is exactly the sort of comedy that speaks to me more than any. And it was just so just nonsensical and so funny that, I mean, having having him talking directly to the camera and just everything, it was perfect. So Emperor's New Groove, it's an easy pick for me between these two.
I think that we've heard of Rescuers Down Under because it is a sequel, right? But other than that, like, it has no imprint on today's society. I think that their biggest failure is they didn't have a sidekick character named Didgeridoo who
surfing.
Yeah. He only talked like
koala.
How are you? I'm good. That's what Didgeridoo sounded like.
Yeah. Oh,
Emperor's New Groove is probably the first Disney movie and maybe the last that didn't rely on classic Kevin Feige, he's standing right behind me humor. Like, it's a legitimately funny movie.
Yeah.
And is finally getting its flowers, because when it came out, it's because all the tubby bowl-cutted mics of the world were in their 5-year period of not seeing Disney movies, and so nobody saw it when it came out.
I love the mic heads who are coming out who they were born on the same day as you in the same hospital, and they're here. This was part of
scientists are trying to figure it out.
Part of another thing too, where like they were doing a thing where we're gonna have our big movie in the summer, but we might have like a slighter movie in the winter. You know, like we might release two. And Emperor's New Groove did not get the attention that something like even Lilo and Stitch did. And then as time went on, everybody was like, this movie's dope.
Yeah. And so hopefully someday, I don't remember if we did this year, Emperor's Deserves episode. Again, I can't remember if we've done one. The story behind that and how many years and Sting was involved, and it was a musical, and it was like all of that. We don't have time
crazy.
to do that.
Just Sting getting an email to sting@sting.org saying, cool songs, fuck you.
Empire, that sucks to be you. We're not doing that version of the movie anymore. Andy, your vote.
Emperor's New Groove.
Ryan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody younger than us that has ever seen Rescuers Down Under.
Or they probably think we're making up a movie right now.
Well, and it was weird because it was a period where Disney wasn't doing sequels. And so it's like, what? A sequel?
Yeah, it didn't do well. And then the next decade, they're like, well, let's do straight to VHS versions of these all year.
But each budget will be $75. Spend it how you want, but that is all of the money we're going to give you. Is it, Andy, is it literally the first sequel?
Technically, no. I mean, Winnie the Pooh had, there was the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and then there was, I think there was another Winnie the Pooh one, but
Winnie the Two.
But those were different because those were combined different short films that they had done, and then
that's a different beast.
So technically, yes.
All right, next up, the reason for the season: Hunchback of Notre Dame versus that surfing jungle Phil Collins lover cruiser Tarzan.
I mean, I have two words for you guys about Tarzan, and it's Phil Collins, and that doesn't tell you if I'm voting for it or not.
No, I know. Are you a no jacket required kind of guy, or
I can't get enough of Tarzan going cha-chunk, 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 cha-chunk.
Just singing about how he could have saved some guy from drowning but didn't.
But he had to play that drum solo. So what am I going to do?
That is the most like Capri Sun fueled. Well, the kids love surfing and skateboarding. Let's put this into animation.
Yeah,
and it does look cool, but it just is thirsty.
It's called Tarzan the Skater Dude, and that movie was gnarly.
His feet have to be so torn up from surfing down the tree trunks all the time.
Oh God, I would if you.
It's one thick callus.
Yeah.
How much would Tarzan's foot-only OnlyFans make? Just thousands of dollars of seeing those bark-ridden, disgusting pups.
People pay for that, and then they see what a beefy dreamboat he is. Even though a white guy with dreads, come on, in this economy, let's stop.
I have to say, guys, I know that we're talking about Hunchback, but I do think that Tarzan, for a lot of reasons, including the rumor that it is the prequel to Frozen, I think it sort of takes it over the top.
Silly.
Is it a good movie?
It has more cultural cachet. Probably not.
There.
I do remember loving because I started seeing movies. My little sister is 10 years younger than me, so I saw this one even though I was in my phase of not seeing things. But the bad guy's death is gruesome. You see it's only in shadow, but he is so frenzied with his machete trying to chop up Tarzan and Jane that he gets all the vines and strangles himself on vines, and you see it just in the shadow of his feet like dangling above the ground. It's dope as shit.
Also, in the very beginning of the movie, baby Tarzan's parents' death is brutal because they die off screen, but then a picture of them falls over, and then the picture bleeds in the same way that they are currently bleeding. That's not true, but can you imagine how fucking...
I did imagine it. I was like, damn, Disney.
It has a killer opening. Both films have killer openings. I enjoy both of them. Both films also suffer with some annoying sidekicks. The Rosie O'Donnell character is a lot to take in this one. I don't think the villains are nearly as interesting in Tarzan. I'm just not kind of excited by them in that one. Tarzan, for me, it has its moments. I know I'm probably going to lose this one, but for me, this is definitely leaning the other direction.
Right, guy?
You know, I do like Jane too. Like that's Minnie Driver, right? And you know, she's not a princess, but princessy. And they both change each other and come to the middle of, you know, what a relationship should be. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of any conversation I've ever been a part of or heard about either one of these movies. And it's scant. It is scant. So you know what? I'm going to go with Andy here. It's the reason for the season.
Nice.
Look at that.
It was going to get pushed through anyway, because I think the only reason Tarzan's back in the vernacular is because the Frozen prequel theory.
That's
equal.
not enough for you?
Well, it's not about the movie itself at all. So, no. So Hunchback moves on. Next up, we don't have to talk long at all, guys. It's Beauty and the Beast versus 2001's Atlantis: The Lost Empire. A movie I remember liking, but I'm aware that the world hates it, so...
But you've seen it.
Fine.
It was in
I
that
have
period.
Seen this
so,
one.
okay, look at that.
And this is
about Atlantis.
Oh, okay.
This is our two
There's
Hunchback
logic behind
directors going up against each other, right?
Say again?
This is our two Hunchback directors, Truesdale and Wise, and this is their first movie and their third movie going up against each other. Ooh. And I don't know if a single pop culture duo who has failed more or dropped down more between Beauty and the Beast and Atlantis.
That's so they did Beauty and the Beast, Hunchback, Atlantis. They should have stopped making movies after their first one.
I think people
they
rewatch Beauty and the Beast with a certain thing because it is renowned for the first movie to ever get nominated for Best Picture, first animated movie, first movie to get nominated for Best Picture. 60 years in, that would be hard. But and they're like arms crossed. That movie's fucking perfect. That movie is so legit. I know. Like The Little Mermaid and the whole tale of, women are only great when they talk. And this is one of this is the ultimate grooming movie. I get that. But come on. This is such a good movie.
Yeah. It's hard to go wrong with pretty much anything in it. The songs are fantastic. The characters are great. The villain is wonderful. Everything about it really works. And Atlantis is a lot of fun. I do have fun with it. I love the concept of it. I loved that they were doing something, kind of trying to do something going into a steampunk sort of direction. They were really doing something different with that one.
I'm really trying to earn the Mike audience back with steampunk.
Steampunk and Atlantis. Michael J. Fox is the star. Come on.
Yeah,
that's Little Mike Catnip.
And it was also the period where it wasn't a musical. And so they were trying to let's just make a fun little sci-fi adventure. And a lot of great intention with it, but it never quite was as great as it should have been.
Over the last 3 decades or whatever it's been, in 4, I don't know, since 91, I think that they've been trying to chase 2 moments. And that is Be Our Guest, and the 2 of them coming down the stairs. Those are indelible moments that they really haven't hit since. So that's my giveaway for the winner of this bracket. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and they're always trying that's those 2 songs, they're always trying to do those exact songs. I think we have those almost in every one of these movies.
Yes. And we'll talk about Hunchbacks when we go back to talk about Hunchback. But right now, let's just say Beauty and the Beast moves on. Next up is Pocahontas versus Fantasia 2000. I love Fantasia, no colon. I could not tell you. I know I've seen this one.
Well,
what's Fantasia 2000?
you probably don't understand it, Mike, because the 1,998 movies in between you probably didn't see.
That's
yeah,
There were a lot. There were a lot
of
to
lore.
watch. Yeah, Fantasia 2000 is continuing Walt's original idea that Fantasia, they were going to release Fantasia every like 10 years or so in different iterations with different short films. Sometimes they would repeat a film, like that was the intention, and then it just never happened because Fantasia wasn't a success. And then they finally decided that they would get it off the ground. And it's got like the whales, you got the scene with the whales where they're swimming and then they take off into the air and they start flying through the air.
Right.
You've got the flamingos, which is generally one of the it's a very short one, but it's very, very fun. You've got Donald Duck where he's Noah's assistant and he's trying to count all the animals and everything. And then he can't find Daisy. And so he's freaking out because he's not going to end up with Daisy.
which is a clear Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Sorcerer's Apprentice plays again. You've got kind of an abstract one with Beethoven's Fifth, and I can't remember. There were a few others, but yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, some really fantastic animation throughout that they did.
I'm sure there's just a huge step down from the first one, having the Philadelphia Orchestra to the Chicago Symphony. And come on, fuck you, Chicago Symphony.
What were they thinking?
Am I showing familial bloodlines because I come from the Philadelphia Orchestra? My grandpa was in it. Yes, I am.
There it is.
Hey, John, did you go see the orchestra this weekend in Philly? Was that close?
That was somebody from Philly learning to read, I think. And then Pocahontas, which I think has its moments, but its biggest moment being Colors of the Wind. It's gorgeous. Yeah. It's a good song. It's the only part people talk about for a reason. I think her animal sidekicks aren't as annoying as they are forgettable.
They don't talk.
That's because they chose to not make them talk.
Yeah.
Which leads to both of those issues.
But like this is, I think, the start, not only the start of the end of the Renaissance that had just started, but also that leads into Hunchback of like, why? Why would you go from telling fairy tale stories to making a non-white woman in charge? Awesome. You guys are on the right path. But white people are cool too. One of them is bad, but most of them are great. And it's going to be his story mostly. And this is not a fairy tale. And by reading her story, you can't tell the real story. So what are we doing here?
Yeah, again, I really appreciate that Disney was trying to do something, and I always would run into this, like the cynical side of me always comes out and saying, well, it's just because Disney's always trying to look for the part of the world that they haven't addressed in one of their stories yet. So we've done France, we've done, this place, we've done that place. Hey, let's do Native Americans. And so sometimes it always feels like they're just like, that's their approach. Okay, yes. Native Americans, what story can we tell that features the indigenous people of America? And so they go, oh, what about this one? And so I feel like sometimes that's how they come to these stories, which is frustrating. They probably could have found a different way.
What about how
a different story to tell?
Sacagawea invented the dollar coin. That was right there.
Or they could have been braver. There's a song, I do think more songs than just Color of the Wind slap in Pocahontas. The other songs are too oft forgotten. But the song Savages is like, oh man, look, this is how the white people talk about the indigenous folks. Look how monsters are. But they do a little both sides, and they're like, oh no, but the indigenous folks are saying the white people are only savages. See how they're all the same in their hate? One side is right. The indigenous folks are right because they were just living their fucking lives. And then Whitey came over to just start killing them.
Yeah, Whitey came over and said, look at how disgusting they are. They don't wear pants. While Whitey was filling their pants with their own shit. Like, they were disgusting people.
All right. Pocahontas moves on, I'm guessing. No, I should get votes. I shouldn't put my thumb on the scale. Andy?
I am kind of torn on this one. It's tricky because it's like, we're getting a film with a story in Pocahontas. Also, I just have to say, I love the villain's song in Pocahontas. I really, really love that song.
That's "Lose Yourself" by Eminem. Is that what they sing?
It's mine.
Mine.
Love that song.
Mine for the taking.
Love that song.
Mike just wrote down another entry on his to do for karaoke list, and it's mine for Pocahontas.
I mean, I kind of want to say Fantasia 2000 only because they were using it as an opportunity to experiment with animation and play around with different technologies and everything. And yeah, I feel like I'm going to go Fantasia 2000.
All right, Ryan.
I'm going to go Pocahontas just because like I think that the movie is average, but the fact that they've included her in the princess line, and she's such a strong character outside of the movie. You know, anything that she's in princess adjacent things is so good. So I'm going to go Pocahontas.
Yeah, I think cultural cash, just that Fantasia 2000 is touching rescuers down under and how often it's forgotten.
Don't touch anybody down under, guys. Like, that's fucked up.
Unless they give you an emphatic yes. All right, round 2, battle 1, The Little Mermaid versus Mulan.
Mulan can move it on over, is what I was going to say, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, as much as there are strengths with Mulan, I mean, it's Little Mermaid, so it's got to be Little Mermaid.
All right, Little Mermaid moves on. Next up, I think a harder one, but maybe not. Aladdin versus The Lion King.
I mean, like, I think that Aladdin has its moments, but I think that Robin Williams lifts as much as he brings down. I think Lion King is like if you were doing a screenwriting class for children or like, let's say middle school kids, Lion King is it. It's a nearly perfect movie.
Or for adults,
Yeah.
I would say. It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I'll say Lion King also.
Lion King moves on. Emperor, just because of how we talked about these movies. Emperor's New Groove versus Hunchback of Notre Dame.
In both quality of film and cachet with the current, I will Emperor's New Groove all the way.
Andy?
I'm going to say Hunchback because it's one of my favorites, but Emperor is also one of my favorites, and it's probably like one behind Hunchback, so it's a very hard one for me. I'm fine letting you say Emperor.
I will not flip over my table if you say
That's
Emperor.
right.
I do understand it's hard because nowhere in your room are you pointing at where your groove poster used to be.
I don't have my little llama in here.
Splish, splish.
But yes, Emperor's moves on. Your final battle in the second round is Beauty and the Beast versus Pocahontas.
Pocahontas, which barely beat Fantasia 2000. So I'm going to go B to the B.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast.
Air B to the B moves on. Little Mermaid versus The Lion King.
Man, we have the director of Moonlight, and if Beale Street could talk, has a Lion King movie coming out this year. That's a lot of like current cachet. But I think Little Mermaid started it all. I have to go with Little Mermaid.
Oh,
wow! I'm going with Lion King. The more I've watched Little Mermaid in recent years, I do find as much as I love all the songs and the story, I find myself struggling with some of the character choices and everything. And so Lion King would be my pick.
Little Mermaid also does this thing that Hunchback does, which is like some of the scenes, some of the close-ups, they just give up on animation. Like somebody draw real fast. Somebody draw. Yeah. Oh, is that Andy? Is he a college kid? Bring him in real quick and let him draw these 2 frames.
Little Mermaid did start it all and has amazing music, but I do think Lion King is close to perfection and nails in a way no other movie did what a wacky sidekick should be. Lion King.
And that Scar, the hyenas,
and that Scar and his hyenas. Emperor's New Groove, which we all love and hold dear in our hearts, versus Beauty and the Beast, which one of our panelists has called movie perfection.
I will say that Emperor's New Groove is like it's the Lilo and Stitch level, right, of perfection, and Beauty and the Beast is like good movie perfection. So
classic. Yeah.
I will have to go with that one.
It's always hard because like I do have movies that I consider a favorite in my top 10 that aren't necessarily like the great films, but I love it so much. But still, in this case, I will be going with Beauty and the Beast as well.
Beauty and the Beast moves on. Your final battle, and maybe looking at all of the 16 films, you said it was always going to be this. It's The Lion King versus Beauty and the Beast.
I knew this would be where we'd end up. Yeah. I
thought Atlantis versus Treasure Planet was going to be it for sure. I think that the history of Disney was building up to 1991, and it's all been a downfall from there. And I don't think that Beauty and the Beast is the best of everything. You know, like I do think that it's in my top 5, but I do think that like this was the peak, the apex mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Even though The Lion King was such a phenomenon, I have to go with Beauty and the Beast.
I could say all the same stuff about The Lion King, but I'm really torn on this one. I feel like I'm going to go with Beauty and the Beast also.
Whew.
That's a tough one.
I didn't want to make a decision.
What does your gut say though, Mike?
Beauty, I think there's a lushness and beauty to Beauty and the Beast. The Lion King looks great, but there's shots in Beauty and the Beast that still take me away.
Well,
so
same in Lion King.
It's also a great looking movie, but I think the dance, the ballroom scene, it's hard for Disney to better that in any way.
Especially when like they were figuring out CGI.
Yeah.
And so like it doesn't look great compared to what we have now, but I feel like here we go. The emotion of the scene helped out the lack of quality CGI in the scene.
Yeah, CGI is really good now. Everybody loves how it looks.
Everyone's its number one fan.
Beauty and the Beast is your Disney Renaissance film.
Look at that.
Look at that. If you have problems with that, you can email us at contact@popfilter.co and we'll wipe our butts with it after we print your emails out. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, more Hunchback. Taste buds, it's time to talk about musicals. Has any movie, not just Disney movie, has any movie had less iconic songs? Can you name, much less sing, a single one? Forgetting that we talked about Hellfire a lot. Menken and Schwartz are an iconic duo. What happened here?
I want to fight you on that.
Do it!
Yeah, Mike, you're asking the worst questions tonight.
Ouch.
I love this soundtrack. I think that these songs, I mean, Menken and Schwartz, I think, paired up to craft seriously top-notch Broadway-level songs that don't necessarily fit into this particular Broadway caliber film. But I think that the songs are incredibly strong, and I think that they each fit in different ways within the story, and that they work. And even when you have to listen to a guy like you, it still fits what the idea of an overall soundtrack was at the time. That and even on Broadway, like you've got to have the fun, quirky songs.
You ain't never had a guy like you.
I forgot that was a song and thought you were insulting me. Like, even though I have to talk about this with a guy like
even though I have to be on a podcast with a piece of shit like Mike. I think that there's different ideas of what musical means and Broadway means. And when you think of like I want to go where the people go, or I like you ain't never had a friend like me, like these are songs that are songs. And then there's this other Broadway thing, which is like we're going to go from talking into singing. And that's how this feels, is like it was one step up of I don't care about having radio hits. I don't care about having Celine Dion or Vanessa Williams or whoever was popular at the time recording this for a radio single. It felt like a Broadway musical in a way that I love on stage. But this felt like they just broke into song willy-nilly. They would all of a sudden have a medley behind them, and there was no song like verse, chorus, bridge that would make any of these memorable. And I like, Mike, you were saying that you would go on road trips and have this album playing of
just not this album.
No. But like
me.
even just like a mix of different Disney songs. Yeah. And I've never heard a mixtape with any of these songs. Like, these are all the most unlistened to songs in Disney history.
And even if you listen to the recorded of these songs, to speak to your point of what kind of Broadway this is taking a page out of, Ryan, is they have so much dialogue in the beginning and the middle. They're like, well, to understand the song, I have to have 45 seconds of Frollo and Quasi talking, so this song makes sense. What I think is this has great musical motifs.
Mm-hmm.
There's the beginning, the dun dun, and those orchestral hits that go throughout the movie. Like, there's clips of that get stuck in my head in a way that I'm like, what if you? I know we've talked a lot about like Disney movies that aren't musicals and how those have been bad, but that's not why they're not bad. But if this had great orchestra behind it throughout it and didn't have lyrics, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, to your point, like Sanctuary, like when Quasimodo swings down from the top, he frees himself and then he swings down from the top of Notre Dame to go rescue Esmeralda and then swing back up and lift her over his head screaming Sanctuary. Like that, the music in that, like you have this fantastic, like this Gregorian chanting going on, like Dies Irae, Dies Irae, like all of this intense stuff that is happening while the action is playing. And that is actually my favorite moment of the movie because it's intense. It's musical, but it's done in a way that is very fitting, I guess, for kind of like the religious themes and everything that they have going on. And so they are doing some great stuff like that. Now, it doesn't exactly fit into the singing and everything. And I get your point as far as like the types and styles of singing and everything. For me, I just think that, and maybe it's just because I'm drawn to this one, and this is
drawn.
I do have this soundtrack, and I basically sang the entire movie while I just watched it again to prep for this.
Oh, so you're like that fucking person in the Wicked Theater who just won't shut up.
I'm that person.
The reason for the signs.
That's exactly. But I think that they work, and again, I think it's tricky because if you're invested in the story, I think it's easier to find the songs something that you're drawn to, and because this is like, they're not necessarily just like the song that you're gonna stop and sing and everyone's gonna talk about be our guest. These are very much like building the story, and then we're telling a little more of the story as we kind of walk through the song. Mm-hmm. And if you're not invested in it, it's harder to want to listen to it again.
I think the songs like Topsy Turvy and Guy Like You stand out because those feel like, they feel like gross attempts to recreate one-to-one good Disney songs.
A Guy Like You is.
And then
that is literally, I'm going to say right now with no research, that is the worst Disney song of all time.
Yes. Which one did you say?
Guy Like You.
A Guy Like You.
Guy Like You.
And then they're so jarring because they take a break from the other kind of music going throughout that's like, okay, we're telling a story, we're doing the sing talk, propelling along, and they're like, well, we'll jam in like the goofy Disney songs in here, and then they feel grosser.
Then I guess my biggest issue is that like you either needed to have 10 more, and I'm not exaggerating, 10 more songs in this movie, so like they really sort of never stop singing if you're gonna go full Broadway,
like Rent,
right? Or because like you forget so much about how like kind of cheesy The Little Mermaid is when they're not singing because of how great the songs are. This movie is corny and the tone is all over the place when they're not singing, and then the songs aren't memorable either. So I don't have anything to grab onto or wait for, not root for. Like I know that like good will conquer evil or whatever, but like I was watching a dude about to throw a baby into a well, and now I'm watching Festival of Fools, which is for me, and I think you guys can tell this about me, by far my favorite song in the movie, or not just my song, but like the favorite segment of the movie. And then some guy gets kicked out of his cage, and we are in a fucking Looney Tune. Bugs Bunny should come out and talk about like how he made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, because the entire movie is different than what I just saw in the first 5 minutes. But so the in-between songs is not really engaging, and the songs are absolutely forgettable. And that's where I think this movie misses.
Well, and I think that there's a valid point in what you're saying, because it's only 90 minutes. If this were on the Broadway stage, they would be able to double it, and they would actually have the time to spread things out a little bit and to invest more energy into both types of things and to kind of create a better flow. And I think that's one of the frustrating elements, most frustrating perhaps with this, is that Disney chose to make this in one of their animated films, and they had to walk this line of wanting to tell an adult story and then having to throw stuff in to appease all the 4-year-olds who are in the theater.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing, is that like this feels like one of the most noted to death movies I've ever seen. Of like the filmmakers wanted this, the animators wanted this, the songwriters wanted this, and then most importantly, the C-suite wanted this. And I could just feel all of them pulling and pushing against each other the entire movie.
Yeah,
which is why, because it makes sense what came after, and each has its own fans. But Hercules, Mulan, they have singular visions, and it doesn't feel. It feels cohesive in a way that this does not, and it feels like maybe they're like watched it like, oh, we fucked that up. Let's learn.
And like.
No, C-suite never thinks they did.
they don't. They just figure out who can we blame.
They just put on a second tie for some reason. Put more cash in a briefcase.
Two-time Magoo.
But yeah, like I do think that this, like everybody who talks shit on musicals, which is not any of us, but the people who do, like I hate musicals, they still love every Disney movie. And I feel like this is the one that is in the middle of like, yeah, but this one still sucks. And because it doesn't pick a side, either go for the Broadway musical fans or don't. But these songs are just sort of like, there isn't, no song has that like 11 o'clock or what is it called on Broadway? You know how you have your 11.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of it. Like
your 11 p.m. song where it's just like, it's right at that moment where like, it like defying gravity. We have none of that here.
The barn burner.
Right.
And the moment, it's interesting because like the way it's sung, I think Out There is my favorite song, and maybe it's because I've listened to it 1,000 billion times. But it's the barn burner, but it's too early. It's the I Want song, but it's too late, because it's the fourth intro. And so it's just like pushing it around. A fun they didn't want Hoche de Leche to sing. They hired him, and they wanted somebody else to do.
What?
And then he went with not Menken, because Menken was dead, right?
No, Menken was.
Menken.
Ashman
He went with
was,
Menken.
Yeah.
They rented a studio, and so Hoche could sing, and to show the producers, and they're like, okay, no, you proved us wrong, which is crazy.
Yeah, what were they thinking? That's a crazy story.
Yeah, his voice is so good.
Yeah,
and it's so.
I mean, you could argue, does it completely fit the character? And I think that was. I remember when the trailer for this came out, even when we were working at the Disney park, we were laughing at the trailer because we're like, that does not sound like a voice that should be coming out of that character. Right. And that is kind of an issue. I've gotten over that. I enjoy his singing a lot. I think he's great, but
you just thought you thought it would be full young Frankenstein of just putting on the Reds.
Or this is the character you get Bobcat Goldthwait for. Not Panic in Hercules.
Right. There you go.
That sound is Speed Round. Bad parents are as common as dead parents in Disney movies. How do Quasi and Frollo compare to the other hero-villain pairings, particularly the familial ones like Scar, Simba, Mother Gothel, and Cinderella's stepmother?
Well, there's definitely, they continue the dark relationship, that's for sure.
Is it the most twisted?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that your family is the family you make on the way, your journey throughout the movie, and not the people who you start out with, because those are always awful people. But I mean, like, Scar was just like, I should be king, get the fuck out of here. Frollo is just a whole, like, we didn't talk about in the horned up thing how, like, the sadomasochism of it all, like, he fucking gets off on this shit.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue Mother Gettle.
I don't know how you say her name.
Gettle?
I know I said it
Girdle?
Wrong. Yeah, she's wearing a girdle. Mother with a girdle. I mean, anytime you have a parental figure who is lying to the child, it's and building their relationship on those lies, you're going to end up creating a pretty complex, villain hero story. And I think that's what we have here. and in that film. But this one, because of those kind of like the pervy, twisted grossness with Frollo, I'd kind of give it to this one.
Disney movies and all movies for this audience are like, if you were adopted, if somebody decided to have you instead of accidentally had you, they're awful people. Like, they are leading you to doom.
Blood parents are angels because they're dead, and adoptive parents are fucking sick monsters who only have it out for you.
Exactly.
How narcissistic do you have to be to have a hand puppet of yourself that you use to tell stories?
I mean, honestly, my biggest problem with this character, and it's a lot with this movie, and it's tone switch constantly, is like, where was he for 70 minutes? Right? Like, he could have been there so much more often, and like, I think it would have been a funnier, better movie.
It does. You asking that question makes me wonder if more ventriloquists need to have ventriloquist dummies that look exactly like themselves. Like, maybe they're really missing out on that.
Oh God! If the curtains pulled back and Jeff Dunham was also controlled by a giant Jeff Dunham,
a giant Jeff Dunham, he'd become my favorite.
But
except instead of my second favorite.
One of the things about Clopin too that we didn't talk about is that it's not just Frollo that hates Quasi. Everyone does. The left, the right, the old, the young, the woke, and the not, they all want him to die.
Even our humble narrator.
Yeah.
Speaking of Frollo, we talked about he's a bad guy, but goddamn, Tony J, that voice, the general visual style, and he suddenly has sword skills at the end. Is this an underrated all-time great kids movie villain?
I mean, have you two ever seen him at a Disney park?
No.
Because I think he would have that, how like...
Actually, no. I thought, they do those Halloweens where they have all the villains wandering around the park, and I was like, did I see him there? But
he's too scary.
He's too scary.
But like, it's gone viral where like Maleficent will take a knee to your child and say like, you're fat and ugly, and then just walk away. I think Frollo would be great. Like, I fucking love this character.
He's great.
Just hitting on the older teenage kids who don't want to be there anymore.
I'm so horny for you. What is that, hair?
They tried it for a day, and then they're like, too much hair sniffing.
Oh, that is Head and Shoulders for women. Oh, God, no dandruff.
A la Tarzan being connected to Frozen. Is this connected to Aladdin and Clopin is the genie? Or did they just say, it worked for us once, let's do that again?
It is connected to Beauty and the Beast. Did you see Belle in the film?
What? No, what?
Oh, I saw a ton of bells.
Belle is walking around when he's singing out there. And it's like, I think it's like out there among the millers and the weavers and their wives, and it pushes in down on the city streets, and you can see Belle walking along reading a book.
She got out of that provincial life.
That's right.
Grand
or maybe
Prairie.
she hadn't moved out of town yet.
She also has one trait, apparently, reading books. Do you think Paul Candell, the voice of Clopin, thought that he was going to be the big time after this?
Probably.
It's the Robin Williams of this movie. That fucking fool.
Is the movie misnamed? Is a better title for a better movie, Esmeralda's Paris Adventures? And is this time for an Esmeralda Sans now, or we are just the Esmeraldas to do it?
Sure.
See? Perfect. Where does Esmeralda rank the pantheon of very pretty animated ladies? We miss you, Greg.
I'll say that I saw Paris and I saw France, and I wish that I saw Esmeralda's underpants. Was that a good Walter Matthau? I saw Esmeralda's underpants. Hey, Jack Lemmon, get out of here. I'm a grumpy old man. Does that work?
That works.
Hey, Mike.
Especially because you said the name.
New character for the show.
Of the movie. Walter Matthau.
Uh-huh.
Have we discovered a new genre of movie films where people show their intricate models of this city they live in, but are embarrassed because they didn't have time to paint it?
First of all, Andy, does that ring a bell at all to you?
No, but the fact that you're asking that makes me feel like it should.
Doc Brown brings...
Sorry, it's not to scale.
Oh my God, you're right.
And he is so embarrassed because it's not painted or not to scale. Yeah, like I think this is our new thing.
And then the little Piggy himself, Alec Baldwin, in Beetlejuice, brags because his is to scale and is limited. So his
That's
is
right.
He did paint
the platonic idea.
In fact,
of Tiny
he
Town.
went to a store to get more paints for his tiny town, and that is how the car crashed.
right.
That is what led to his death. So
It's his own store.
It's
Right.
hubris.
He runs the hardware stores just so he can get all the parts for his house, his little model.
guys, speed
How-
round question. Beetlejuice. Bad movie, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
Sorry.
It's a bad 5 movies stitched together, a la Monica Bellucci. Is that her name?
Yeah.
It is now.
How do the voice actors in this movie perform? There's some pretty big names. Your Demi Moore, your Kevin Kline, your Jason Alexanders. Do they all deliver big performances?
I don't think
Tom and Tony are great.
who and Tony.
The rest
Tom
of them
Holce de Leche is great, and
Can't step out of the 90s.
I felt so bad for Jason Alexander, especially knowing that what has happened with Veep and Julia Louis-Dreyfus's career. We won't talk about Kramer, but this guy tried so hard to just be on that Robin Williams level of I am capable of everything, and he got. I'm not going to blame him, but he got fucking stoned.
Hosed.
Yeah.
Why did Quasimodo pass out in the climax? We've seen him swing around like Spider-Man, and then he's carrying Esmeralda. We've seen him do that fine, but is it smoke inhalation? He just when he needs to swing the hardest, he just is super slow and bad at it.
I like the smoke inhalation. I
Yeah, that's better than let's not talk about Disney movies in this way. Do you guys think that Sam Raimi was in this audience and said, "Oh, I can do a Spider-Man movie"? I feel like there's so many shots in here that were look at that guy swing. This works.
Right.
We can do this.
We can make this happen. Yeah, I love it.
What was with the fucking gargoyle obsession of the back half of the 90s?
Mike, I'm going to say that you're a good 10 years younger than us. What you us?
I loved the show, The Gargoyles.
Okay.
They're demonic, but they're badass. They look great. They're cool. You can talk to them if you're Spider-Man.
I think that it's crazy that all of our Disney sidekicks are gargoyles here, and then we had that show later, and it couldn't be based on the success of Hunchback because it wasn't that successful. So what was going on here?
Was it later? When did Gargoyles come out?
When did Gargoyles come out? Talk amongst yourselves.
Hey, Andy,
you
when did
said that,
Gargoyles
and
come out?
When you said gargoyle obsession, I was started what other things have gargoyles? The only other things I can think of is Tales from the Dark Side.
Gremlins 2, when the flying gremlins
2.
flew into the cement
Right.
and then landed on the side of a building.
Yep. Was there any? There wasn't a gargoyle in Spawn, was there? I mean, he's standing on the building like he's a gargoyle, but he's not really.
Yeah, he and Batman stand near gargoyles.
Yeah.
But they
And
don't.
probably talk to them. Let's be honest. Those bitches are crazy.
The only hero we've seen is in the Spider-Man the animated series from the 90s. He does have a gargoyle friend he names Bruce and talks to him quite often. Gargoyles, the animated series, ran from 1994 to 1997. So
Okay.
this was slap in the middle of the gargoyle science.
Maybe that's why they felt talking gargoyles would make good sidekicks.
You never bring up a topic unless you throw a sans at the end of it.
You got
That's a rule.
The art in this, as so much of this era, is a mix of cell and computer animation. How do they combine to make the look of the film? Does it always work, Assange?
As a shit talker of this movie, I will say that there are scenes where Phoebus and Esmeralda are talking, and it looks like early Dawn Bluth. It looks like shit. But when they're in the incredible opening, I think the third opening where Quasi's swinging through the bells, and the start of Act 3 where he's like, "Oh, I got this," and grabs a rope and swings across the entire mad ass about to burn everything down crowd of Paris. Some of it is breathtaking. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that really sells it. The bells, I mean, the bells themselves are fantastic. The one thing that always stands out CG wise for me that sometimes is a little awkward, they were experimenting with crowd generation with this film, and it's great because you get actual full courtyards of actual people instead of just little scribbles representing heads and arms and stuff. But there are times where you can really catch the repetitiveness of some of those characters, and it's a little rough.
I think at
But,
one part they copied the crowd from MVP '96 for PlayStation 1, and so it's just a crowd of San Francisco Giants fans just cheering so hard.
How much fire insurance does your average mill need? That shit lit up.
Jeez.
I mean, even Frollo should say, I know what mills made of hay do. Get the family out of there. Like, I know you're a bad guy, but like, shit, dude.
We talked a lot about different ways he's one of the worst Disney villains and how villainous he is. But lock this family and their child in there because they didn't do the thing I'm accusing them of doing, so they should die. And that's what it takes. Phoebus at this point has been like, I'm a decorated war hero, and I think this is bullshit, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut because power systems.
Okay, so I have an incredible Walter Matthau, and Mike has an incredible Kevin Kline. That was so good.
That was dead on. Was that the star of Dave and In and Out right here? Does how cruel the crowd is to Quasimodo at the Festival of Fools kind of make Frollo's point about how bad that festival is?
I mean, what it does is elevate Esmeralda, right? Like, if this is Esmeralda's story, then it elevates her to be the best of the best. But what we get with that is every single person in Paris in this caste system, from the bottom to the top, hates this guy because the right side of his forehead is a little big.
People are the worst is really the lesson of the film.
Why didn't Frollo ever say, if I wasn't from Paris, then why would I wear this hat?
Do they sell this hat at Disneyland with Mickey ears? Just the big.
That would be the best. Oh my god.
Oh god. And
the Festival of Fools takes place on January 6th. I have no questions.
6th of January, yeah.
Shouldn't Esmeralda get two boyfriends? Isn't that the most just ending for the movie?
Hell yeah.
They say that for Hunchback 2, The Trouble with Thrupples.
Well, we also have 3 gargoyles, but how about okay, so I was wrong. It's not that all humans should split up and hook up with the gargoyle, but the 3 humans hook up, the 3 gargoyles hook up, we get to watch. Yeah. That is a win-win situation. I'm gonna get my rocks
that
off.
Is the that's a point. For who though? It's for Ryan. Sometimes it wins me over. That is it for Speed Round. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's award season.
That is the it for Speed Round.
Shut up! Don't repeat what I say back to me. Hunchback was nominated for an Academy Award.
Best Hunchback.
You guess which? Okay, it is a rare award. It comes up a couple times through the decades, and it did. Andy, what's your guess?
Well, it has to be the music. I don't think
score or song.
As much as I love the songs, I know they weren't the favorite of people, but I would say the score. I mean, Alan Menken, just like that chanting and everything. I would go with the score if I'm going to pick something from this. I don't. Yeah. The animation category wasn't around yet, so that's my guess.
We've talked a lot about Hellfire and Out There. But I do think that the Bells of Notre Dame is the song, right? The intro song?
And I think that's
song.
the one with the main
that's the
theme
opening.
Of the movie.
All of the stuff that you hear throughout is all in that song. It's like the seed planter for the entire movie.
Yes.
But it is score.
Correct. But it is score. We are going to give it more than that, even though we are going to talk about music once. Starting with 90s slang. What's the most 90s slangiest moment of this movie, Ryan?
Victor, who we have not talked about enough, which was the very suited up dude from Murphy Brown. Can't get more 90s than that. Says ignorance is bliss. And Hugo, Jason Alexander, says, look who's talking. Which I don't think they said in Paris 1492 or whenever this took place. But we did say in the 90s a lot. Just before "not" came into fashion, we were always like, look who's talking.
That is a pretty good entry. Andy, what do you got?
There's The one that makes me cringe, I don't think it's necessarily 90s, but it's when Esmeralda goes, by the way, great mask. It's the little finger gun point that she does at him. But I think I probably would say it's not even a line or something that he says, but at one point when, I don't know, there's some success of some sort, and Jason Alexander is like, woo, woo, woo. He does that little...
The Arsenio Hall.
The dog pound.
Honestly, like, as much shit as I've talked on the songs, I liked that they were there. Don't cut the songs, cut the comedy. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Don't have those, like, there's a thing towards the end where Phoebus and Quasi are like blaming each other, like, no you. We don't need those moments, guys. Stop.
Yeah. Just make it deadly serious, and the kids will.
There you go.
We are giving that one to the whoo 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 of it
the dog pound.
Okay.
The dog pound. The musical moment of Hunchback, which is hard. It is a musical. Andy, what stands out as the moment?
Well, I'm going to call out again. It's not necessarily a song that people are singing, but it's the sanctuary sequence when it's all the chanting and everything, and it's when Quasi swings down, grabs Esmeralda, saves her from the fire, and then brings her back up, and then holds her over his head and screams "Sanctuary." Like, that musical cue is, I think, just Alan Menken at his best. It's just incredibly powerful, just beautiful stuff. So that's what I'm going to go with.
It's epic. It's impactful. It is nerve-inducing. Why would you hold her like that over
while you're standing on the edge?
Like, remember when Michael Jackson just held his baby over the balcony for no reason?
Take care of Blanket the
right.
baby. Reality's weird. Ryan, what is your musical moment?
I don't know if I've expressed enough in this episode how much I love Frollo and all of his weird little things. And him just going into his room and singing Hellfire in general. Just a fucking weird little religious... Like, it's the Be Prepared, right? It's Scar's song for this movie. But he's just like, I smelled her hair and I got erect. What do you think I should do next? And there's fire everywhere. It's fucking... It is impactful. Like, I got the chills that you guys are talking about with Sanctuary, but it's also hilarious.
We're going to give that one to Sanctuary, even though Ryan did look up the first draft of the lyrics. I do appreciate that. What is, and I do think there are a fair amount, Ryan, what's the cringiest moment of Hunchback?
There are, and like the amount of times that the G word is said, right? We could go with that. Or just Esmeralda is, despite the fact that she wants to sexualize herself, the amount of people who sexualize her on top of that. But no, it's Jason Alexander's first speech. That's when I knew I was in for a bad time. It's just like, he might as well have come alive and said, hey guys, you heard of Robin Williams? Not that. You heard of Michael Richards? Not that. Have you heard of Jeff Dunham and Paula Poundstone? I'm not that either. I'm just going to say, who poured the wine and cut the cheese? Are you fucking kidding me, movie?
That is that line. A made for a trailer line. Because kids will not know what wine is, but know that's farts. Andy, what's your cringe?
I mean, I have to agree. Like, I can deal with all of the other stuff that's going on in the film because there's context for it to fit in as far as what's going on between Frollo and Esmeralda and just the way the people are being treated and everything. But it's the gargoyles just kill it for me. Like, as soon as they show up. I mean, I can even take Quasimodo talking to the bird. Like, sure.
Yeah.
He's going to talk to a bird.
We all talk to a bird every once in a while.
We all do it. But it's just it's the gargoyles. As soon as they show up, I'm like, oh yeah, I have to get through these guys again.
And just 3 of the least thought out comedic stereotypes slammed together.
Well,
because you've seen that before.
Okay, writer's room. We did such a good job 3-dimensionalizing the 4 leads. So we can do whatever we want with these gargoyles. We can make them suck as much as we want.
It would have been so much better if Hugo, Jason Alexander's gargoyle, was still just George from Seinfeld. That would be hilarious. If he was like a bitter, angry, nitpicky kind of guy, that would be so much funnier.
Yeah.
So yes, cut the cheese will stand in for the gargoyles in general.
I would have liked it more like when Andy was talking about the movie Dinosaur and said that like it was full on real backgrounds. If it was a real foreground, an actual Jason Alexander was there on the set of the animated movie talking. That would have been better.
He would redeem himself in live action. I think 2 years later, the straight to TV magical world of Disney, the Brandy Cinderella. Jason Alexander was in it. He was great.
Who was he?
Cinderella.
He was Jason Alexander as Brandy, as Cinderella. He was like her major domo. He was the Sebastian type character. He was like finicky and like, oh no, you're going to get into trouble.
Gotcha.
But he was much better and could sing. Pound for pound performance, Andy.
I mean, it's Tony J with this one. I mean, as much as I enjoy what Tom Hulse is doing here, I just think that he is capturing this darkness with this character. He's got this perfect voice too, and just like he does a great job of that kind of being falsely sincere when he's talking to Quasimodo, and just like and Quasi's buying into it. Like just everything about him is just just love him.
Ryan, what's yours?
Of the four leads, we'll say the four leads, I'm going to leave Kevin Kline out. And you didn't ask me who was the worst, but I'll just throw Kevin Kline out. I thought that
apparently
Demi Moore and Tom Hulse did do an incredible job, but I watched this movie with headphones, and this guy Tony J rocks your fucking eardrums. So it's not just like being subtle. He doesn't know what the animation is, right? Like he doesn't know that Frollo is smiling about all these fucked up things. He's just doing, and he's born with this voice that is so fucking perfect that I cannot believe he wasn't at least an animation star after this movie.
Yeah, he was. His name I had never heard, and that's my fault. That's the world's fault as well.
But he is in Beauty and the Beast.
Who is he in that?
He is very small part.
He plays Belle.
The guy who runs like the prison or whatever that comes to take the father away. Very small part.
But like it's such a good lesson for Disney that like if you have to get your whoever to like put on the poster, that's cool. But cast the rest with the of characters with the most talented people possible. Because nobody was going for Tony J, but they'll remember this movie because of Tony J.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Tony J looks like in real life, but Clancy Brown in my head is the face of Tony
for sure.
J. Our last award is director's signature moment. Ryan.
So we talked earlier about how these directors had sort of a dwindling career from Beauty and the Beast to Atlantis. But like I feel like the one most impactful moment and the thing that I saw, like that I learned from watching Beauty and the Beast so many times is Quasi's swing from the top of Notre Dame to around the crowd. It's so like he's in so much charge, and they are moving the camera in such a way where like if there are blips and bloops, if you go frame by frame, you probably notice some CGI mishaps, but like you're in the movie at that point. Like you are just like you are swept away. You are going with Quasi on that thing, and the 4 years between Beauty and the Beast and this really did computer and CGI a lot of wonders, and like that shot fucking crushes it. There's a lot of stuff with Quasi moving, where I think the movie soars, but that's the one moment.
That's a good one, Andy.
Yeah, I mean that whole sequence is just like perfect animation for me. Just like they're perfect in this film. Just the sanctuary, the music, and that animation there of watching him come down in a single shot. It's a stunner the way that they craft that. I just love it.
There's a smoothness these guys get out of animation that it's weird that other people. There's a lot of flow in Aladdin, but this doesn't exist in that. Like how they have that jaw dropping ability that other animated directors don't somehow.
They were the Russo brothers of our generation.
Wow.
Don't know if that's an insult or a compliment.
Tom Hulce is their Tom Holland. Impossible to argue with. All right, before we declare the winner and shut the door, let's do some recommendations. Andy. What do you got?
You know, I was thinking of like Victor Hugo related things and like where could I go? And I'm sure Les Mis is something that people are going to bring up, but I'm going to actually say the 1998 version of Les Miserables, which
Liam
a lot
Neeson?
of people probably don't even remember that there was a version
No.
of this film in 98. Liam Neeson plays Jean Valjean. Jeffrey Rush plays Javert. And it's got Uma Thurman, Claire Danes, and it's, you know, it is an interesting telling. It's not a musical version of the story. They're just taking the book and crafting a version of it. I prefer the musical because I just didn't want to go with the musical, but I think that it was a really interesting version of the story that definitely worked and is worth checking out.
Nice. I did not know that one existed.
It's not a musical version, but they all the lyrics are there. So it's Liam Neeson just walking up and being like, "Look, when you hear the people sing, those are going to be songs of angry men."
But it's really terrifying the way he says it quietly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
Ryan, what is your rec?
I wanted to recommend a Disney movie that maybe not everybody knows. And this was sort of like in the pandemic, but it wasn't Encanto because that one sort of flopped in theaters. That was a waste of money. And then it blew up on Disney Plus so fucking bad that it's one of the most popular Disney movies of all time. But just in case in that era you forgot about something, I want to bring up Raya and the Last Dragon. Because I think that this is such an incredible movie with incredible animation, incredible. I'm just going to keep saying incredible, but like this is a non-musical that does all of the storytelling tropes. It does have Awkwafina, where I don't know what your guys' level of tolerance.
Oh, is she playing that one character?
She's playing that dragon. Who
She's the dragon.
Yeah, who has a.
No, I meant Aquafina. She has the character of Aquafina.
A dragon as Awkwafina, but I really like what they did with it. It's a ton of storytelling. It's 4 or 5 hours of storytelling in this movie, and it does not set you as an adult back or kids back at all. Like it's a really impressive movie.
Nice.
And it is beautiful. It is a stunning film to look at.
Mine
plus
is,
Daddy Daughter.
What was a plus Daddy Daughter?
It's hard to watch.
I went dark animation that makes you feel weird things with a lecherous old villain who lusts after one of our heroes.
Can't wait.
1982's The Last Unicorn.
Oh my god.
Oh.
And I cannot tell you if this movie holds up, but the amount me and my siblings watched it as kids, just re-scarring each other over and over, deciding that's what we were going to watch that day. There's certain images from this that are burned into my brain. Just check it out. See if it scars you too.
I watched it recently, and I would say that it's one of those movies that's sort of skittish in that some slow parts, but like with a ton of incredible moments. But Jeff Bridges as the main guy, right? And he's like, there's a unicorn, man, and we got to find it. Like,
wait, you have a Walter Matthau and a Jeff Bridges?
They're very similar, by the way.
A man of many talents. So we have done it. We're closing the book on the Hunchback of Notre Dame. How do we think it's going to do in the bracket?
Oh, Mikey. Is it the worst movie we've watched so far?
Oh.
So
Mars Attacks, I think, currently holds that.
Just so Andy and the listeners know, we have done People vs. Larry Flint, Scream, Mars Attacks, Swingers Breaking the Waves, and Lahane, and Trainspotting.
I would say Mars Attacks is the worst on that list. I don't like Mars Attacks. It just a lot of Tim Burton at his worst with some of his ideas and everything. But yeah, I'm not surprised that this may end up. I walked in knowing that this is a difficult film for a lot of people, and so I won't be surprised if this does end up dropping off right away. I mean, to be fair, you put my pick last time up against Terminator, so that was a tough one. But I never was expecting Electric Boogaloo to. I was totally expecting to be last place with that.
Hey, Mike, next
season,
season,
I'd like to think I'm not going to be last place.
We'll see. Next season, Mike, let's have Andy pick the number 1 seed so he can feel like
Yes.
a champion.
We'll give you a list of 1. We're like, Andy, you should come do this movie. Because I never even thought about that angle where the guests in the finale will feel emotionally tied to how their movie
Oh,
does.
I mean, I think that we said that, what was it? Terminator versus Breaking 2?
Oh, yeah, that was Pete versus Andy.
Yes.
It was Terminator versus Pete against me.
And we didn't even talk about movies. We
Tough.
said that Pete can live and Andy must die. Like, that's a lot of pressure to put on the guests.
That is rough. Let's get to everybody's least favorite part because it's emotional and it's heartbreaking, and I have to decide who will become my best friend for a week and who will get locked in a straw-filled mill and burn alive with their family. Ryan, you got 57 points.
Okay. Heinz style.
It's a lot of points. Andy, you got 59.
Oh, shit.
You are my best friend, and you
Hey,
live.
whew, that was a close one. Do I have the option of breaking the glass and rescuing Ryan, though? Can I do that? Or is that...
It's never been done, but I'll allow it.
Okay.
I love this house made of hay, but perfect glass windows. That
Yeah.
Andy's going to jump through Bourne style and save me.
Maybe they could have gotten different building material if they hadn't spent their life savings on those windows. Do you know how much glass costs back in 1492 France? Holy shit, guys.
That is when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. We do have to admit that.
I was like, is this 1492 too? Wow. So many
The
things
sequel.
happening here.
Andy,
Well, he was looking for more glass.
Andy, I have to tell you that every episode I do, I know that I'm going to lose. For this one, I was for sure that I was going to win. So this comes as a double shock to me. I'm double upset.
And I have to say, similarly to Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo, I am more fond of this movie walking out of here tonight than I walked in.
I absolutely am too.
Okay.
Because
Look at that.
the good parts are so good. And
Yes.
as time goes on, don't you just forget about the bad parts of anything you watch?
Yeah. Well, and
to a
I
point.
swear you can just put the opening 6 minutes of this on, like that whole opening of the Bells of Notre Dame,
Yeah.
of watching like that dark opening with Frollo like killing the woman on the steps of the church, almost
That is-
drowning the baby. Like that is like freaking intense storytelling.
short film.
Yeah.
Andy mentioned the Liam Neeson. I'm sure there's a director, but the Liam Neeson Les Mis, and then going to the Hugh Jackman Les Mis. Nothing as fucking brutal as this G-rated Disney movie in those two movies that happens like that. Like that. This movie's disgusting.
Andy, if people wanted to find more of you, where could they do that?
You can find the shows that I'm a part of over at truestory.fm. I'm a co-host on The Next Reel, which is, they're all movie podcasts. The Next Reel, CinemaScope, Movies We Like, and Marvel Movie Minute. Those are 4 of the shows that I'm a part of over there, along with just all the other stuff on the network. So check it out.
Yeah, the fact that you said those are 4 of the shows I'm a part of is terrifying. That means there's so many more shows you're a part of. Good for you. This has been Hunchback of Notre Dame. Next week we are covering Mission: Impossible? Until then, keep watching those movies.